be here. And reporting is in progress. All right. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so honored to be here. And I know that, so I'm speaking English, and then I know that some of you are translating this into Spanish. And so my English is not my first language either. So I just wanted to start this by inviting, like, if you have, like, I would love to connect with you guys and tell me if I speak too fast or too slow, or if I'm, not being of service to you. And also, if you have questions, you don't have to wait until the end, just come in here and ask a question. And there's I know people will be happy to translate the questions. So just take this as an invitation to interact with you guys. Yes, thank you for that beautiful presentation. My name is Rikke. I am in Denmark at the moment, come from Denmark. I live in Sweden. I'm on a hotel room. I'm traveling. And so I am just happy to spend this, for me, it's afternoon, Sunday afternoon with you guys. And so what we're going to do today is to talk about practicing what we preach. And just, I'm sorry, I didn't ask this beforehand. Can people, can people chat with me? Can they come on camera? I'm just asking because I don't know. How can I interact with the people who are watching?
Yeah, you can interact any way you want. We're all here, so.
So people can, if there are questions, people can come in here and put on their camera and talk to me.
Yeah. Can you see everyone now?
Yes. Great. Just checking. Just checking. So, what I wanted to do is this workshop called Practice What You Preach. And the reason why I wanted to do this today is because, and I don't know if you guys recognize this, I see so often that we talk about act rather than actually doing act. Do you recognize this in yourselves? I'm just going to go out and check your beautiful faces here in the gallery view. Yes. So I see us, and so I do a lot of training and supervision in ACT. And so both I see myself getting entangled in this, and I see the people that I teach and supervise too. It's like they sometimes start presenting or talking about ACT rather than modeling it. And so this is what we're going to be working on today. And I was hoping that we could do a little breakout room work. Is that possible? I just want to double check with the organizer.
Totally possible.
Yeah,
totally
everything.
possible.
And I'll give you a fair warning. So what we're going to do is work. My invitation is that you step outside, a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and try a little ACT process on yourself, and that we're going to talk about things that can be a little bit difficult. Would that be okay? Can we have a yes? If this is okay, let's do a little hearts or thumbs up or something like that. Perfect. All right, guys. All right. So I'm going to share a portion of my screen. Hope this is working. Do you see my screen now? Yes, great. So practice what you preach. And I'm just gonna, pardon if there are any technical hiccups here, I think. All right. So first of all, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is that sometimes when we talk about clients, we talk about it as if like there's I'm just gonna shut down my email so that I don't have email coming in. Pardon. All right. So sometimes when we talk about clients as if there's a them and then there's we. Like we're the therapists, or we are the practitioners, or we are the change makers. And then there's clients, and that is, as if there's something else. And one of the things that I'm guessing you already know because you are into ACT is that when we work with act, I think for me, one of the most beautiful examples of well done act is when we don't make a difference between ourselves and others. So in the words of the famous Martin Luther King, we may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. So instead of talking about we and them, we talk about there is only us. And I know that you guys probably, this is probably how you work already. But I think it's so important that we all now step into this space that we might sometimes have the function as a practitioner or the function as a therapist or the like, and that the person that we're working with might have a function as a client or a patient. But basically, we're all the same. We're all the same. We share the struggles. You know what it's like to feel sadness. You know what it's like to be nervous and feel scared. And so my invitation is that we step into this place together and explore our common humanity. If you've ever been to any of my workshops, it might be so that you will hear me tell some of the same stories. I might repeat myself. And actually, there is a reason why I'm doing this. And so I wanted you to imagine that you go to a concert. What's like, could anybody help me here? What would be like a famous Argentinian, I don't know if that's the right way to say, is there like a famous Argentinian band or an artist that we can use just for the purpose? Ooh, let me just check the chat and see if you are the chat. So Divididos. All right. So Gustavi Cerrati, maybe. Yes. Okay. So this metaphor that I'm bringing to you right now actually came from when I was at a concert with Eric. And so, okay, I'm just going to double check. So if you want to mute yourself, if you're not talking to, yes. So I was at a concert with Aerosmith, Steve Tyler and Aerosmith. It was here in Copenhagen a few years ago before COVID. Soda Stereo, yeah. And so I was in my leather pants, high heels. I was ready for rock and roll. And I was standing very close to the stage and I was ready for Aerosmith. And then what happened is that they played songs that I've never heard before. Like literally, it was just, I've never heard them. And so you can imagine me going, I was, ready to living on the edge. And it was just songs I've never heard before. And obviously what happened was that I didn't dance. I was trying to sing along, but I was not as, into it. The band was amazing. Aerosmith is amazing. Steve Tyler is amazing. The point here is that it was difficult for me to sing along because I'd never heard it before. But then it came. Then they started coming. And I was like, don't want to close my eyes, and I was starting to sing along all of the time. Why? ¿Por qué? Why am I talking about Aerosmith and rock concerts and Soda Stereo and Gustavi Cerrati and Divididos? Because repetition is the mother of learning. And you want to step into a space where you imagine yourself as an act rock star. You can call yourself an act rock star, where you want to repeat. You want every session to be a relatively short set list of songs that you're playing again and again and again, so that your patients or your clients start to sing along. And the reason why I'm saying this is so often we think that I have to come up with a new metaphor or a new exercise or a new way of explaining it. I have to come up with something new and fresh. Or you think, oh, I've said this once, I don't have to say it again. And so the reason why I'm saying this is that you want to repeat and repeat and repeat what you're saying, because when you start to repeat, your clients start to sing along. When they've heard it so many times, they start to sing along and they start taking what you're teaching them with you outside of the therapy room. And so if you've been to my workshops, you will hear that I'm kind of saying the same things again and again and again. And that is simply because of this. Repetition is the mother of learning. So whenever you hear yourself thinking, oh, I have to do something new, a new exercise, a new metaphor, you absolutely can do that. But think about repeating yourself. All right, I hope this little metaphor resonates with you, and that what you take away with you is also that you are an ACT rock star. Yes. Put that on your resume, on your CV, on your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook profile, your Tinder profile. You are an ACT rock star. All right. Let me just check to see if there are any questions for me so far. All right. I will start off this one with a story something that actually happened to me. And again, some of you might have heard this, so I'm going to repeat something that, you know, I teach sometimes in my workshops. So many years ago, I had a client who was suicidal. She was so sad that she had written a suicidal letter for her children. She felt so bad that she was sure that the world would be a better place if she was no longer here. She was so sure that she would give her children a better future if she were no longer here. And this story, or this true story that I'm going to tell you about, was actually the moment I decided to be somebody who teaches to practice what you preach, because this is by far one of my most shameful examples, one of my mistakes that I do talk about it, but I don't like to talk about it because, again, I feel shame. I feel embarrassed because I want you to think that I am very competent. And this story will tell you that sometimes I'm just not. So I was seeing this client, as I said, she had written this letter to her children, and she started reading it to me in session, and I just lost it. I completely lost it. I had no idea what to say. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea. It was just like you. I don't know if you have this expression in Spanish. I'm guessing you have it, like something just went down, and I had, I don't even think I was able to remember my name. And so there I was, and she was reading out aloud this letter, and she was very sad. And so was I. I was sad because, I felt for her and her children. I was scared because I didn't know what to do. I was scared I was going to lose my license, my job. I was scared, like, what's going to happen to her children if she takes her own life, etc., etc. And I did the one thing that I'm very good at, especially when I'm stressed. I started talking. I started talking and I went up to the whiteboard. And while I was talking, I was also drawing. I was like, visualizing things on the whiteboard. I started teaching her about ACT. And so let's just go through the ACT. I'm going to come back to this story. I promise you, I'll tell you more about it. I just wanted to tell you that one of the things that I personally am good at sometimes is teaching ACT. And so basically I didn't bring slides. Obviously, I didn't put on a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm pretty sure that if I could, I probably would have. So let's just pause my story and go briefly through the ACT model. This is the model that some of you know very, very well. And this is just, a short repetition. So sometimes you see the ACT model like this displayed as the ACT is a broad term, and in ACT, what we work on is massaging or strengthening what we call psychological flexibility. We don't work on decreasing symptoms. We work on turning up psychological flexibility. We work on expanding behavioral repertoire, expanding life, and expanding function in life. And so these are the 6 core processes that we often work on in ACT. What we work on, one of them is called acceptance. And we want to be mindful about the word acceptance. Many people, and I'm guessing this would be true in your language as well, that many people hear acceptance as tolerating or passively being with what is, or it's something like that. And so what we want to work on is being willing to experience difficult emotions. So acceptance is not a passive term. It's actually an active behavior of choosing to willingly experience difficult emotions. And this, my friend, goes for both the client and the therapist. And just for the purpose of this workshop, I'm going to make this distinction of the client and the therapist, and knowing that we're all in the same boat. So this has it's for the communication of the different functions that we have. But notice how often we work on acceptance, and what we model at the same time might be something different. I'm going to come back to that as I continue the story in just a moment. But I want you already now to start thinking about what it means to not only talk about acceptance when you are doing therapy or coaching or whatever it is that you're doing, when you're having ACT conversations. What does it mean to show willingness and acceptance as the therapist? We also talk about diffusion. Diffusion is stepping back from your sometimes very busy mind, stepping back, noticing our thoughts and feelings, and starting to choose what thoughts and feelings you will kind of buy into and which ones you won't. So this is where you actually step back and you start to choose. I love this saying that you can choose, like, do I have my thoughts, or does my thoughts have me? I hope that makes sense. Am I having this thought, or is this thought having me? So you want to step back and observe your thoughts without being ruled by them. So stepping back and noticing, and then choosing which ones you'll follow and which ones you won't. And again, I want you to just for a second here, reflect upon the times where you have talked about diffusion, where you have taught, like been the teacher of diffusion, but maybe at the same time modeling fusion, like modeling being totally sucked into your own mind. Do you recognize this in yourself? I'm just going to go out here and just look at your beautiful faces. Do you recognize this? Yes. Talking about diffusion while being absolutely sucked into thoughts of, I am a horrible therapist. I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what to say. Have you ever felt like that? Yes. See. Thank you. I'm not completely alone here in that. So what and I'm going to come back to this because you're going to practice this a little bit later. You're actually going to practice and talk about this in smaller groups. So diffusion again is stepping back from your thoughts and observing them. When we're talking about present moment, it's all about directing our attention to the here and now in a non-judgmental way. I think some even add in a curious and non-judgmental way. So you heard me say this before, and ACT, as you probably know, is based on the ACT is a contextual behavior therapy. And what we aim to do is broaden the client's behavioral repertoire. We want to broaden their repertoire. We want to broaden their psychological flexibility. And when working with present moment awareness, working with mindfulness, as it sometimes says, or here and now, what we want to do is expansion of attentional repertoire. We want the attention to not only be stuck one place, but we want to be able to step back and shift our attention to different events, if you will. It sounds very technical, but I want to be able to notice my own heartbeat, the smell of the room right now, maybe the color of the eyes of the person that I'm talking to, the anxiety in my chest, the sadness in my heart, the shape of the thing that is just behind here. I want to be able to put my attention in different places. And sometimes, again, this is what we're teaching our clients, to be mindful. And I'm guessing that you and me both have a lot of experience with teaching mindfulness while we ourselves are all over the place inside our heads, either going back, maybe beating ourselves up for something that we did, or worrying about the future, like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? What's going to happen here, etc., etc. And I think that one of the most precious ways of delivering any therapy, regardless of the method that you are working with, I find it so beautiful when I see practitioners doing here and now, like being in the moment rather than talking about being in the moment. So that's something that we're going to practice in here. I hope this makes sense to you guys. Here's the thing about being online like this is that I can't really see your faces because I'm looking into the camera. And if I were to look at your faces, I'm going to sit like this and you're going to disconnect a little bit. So I'm just imagine that you are nodding and you're saying, sí, claro, and all of that while I'm talking to you guys. All right. So another thing, and this is where I see many therapists sometimes getting stuck, is when we come to this self as context. Oh, I'm just going to go out here and look at your beautiful faces again. And I'm going to ask you, has anyone in here ever wondered what is self as context really about? Yes. When I ask therapists, like, how may I help you? How can I, like, what is one place where you kind of get stuck? And so many therapists say, including myself, will say self as context. What the is that? So let's just have a little look at that, and let's do a little self as context work in here today, guys. Self as context is when you take this is actually where we work on perspective taking. This is where you kind of take a helicopter perspective, if you will. You zoom out and you take a different perspective. So I'm just going to check if that's a question or is it somebody who accidentally put their mic on. Okay, I think maybe there wasn't a question. So what we want to work on is to flexibly take perspective on our experiences of self. So the way I think about it when I work with self as context, one is that we take a different perspective where we see ourselves as the kind of the container of all of our stories. We're kind of starting to notice our stories. We kind of start to hold them a little lighter. And we start to notice that I am the one having my stories. I am the one experiencing my stories. And I am not my stories. So it's a way of kind of expanding the area around our stories and seeing ourselves as a much broader context who can experience all of this. And this is also where we work with where you can work with compassion, taking a more compassionate, more kind, more forgiving perspective on ourselves and our stories. And one of the things that I see therapists do, and so here's what I work with all day is mainly therapists. I train and supervise therapists. And if there's one thing that I see that we often have in common, is that we're being so critical of ourselves. And I'm guessing that resonates with you as well. I don't think I've ever met a therapist that says, I am just completely competent. I am so good at this. I nail it every time. I know exactly what to do. Like, I'm so good. And, frankly, if we met somebody like that, we would probably think that was a bit, we would probably want to offer that person a little perspective too. So one of the things that touches my heart and that I love to work with, and that you'll hopefully see in this workshop today, is allowing therapists to look at themselves with kindness, to offer therapists to look at themselves with compassion and forgiveness, and step into that place where we hold that part of us that wants to criticize us, and we hold that part too in compassion and kindness, to have compassion for the struggle, to have compassion for those sides of us too. So we're going to come back to that. I hope that resonates with you guys. And in ACT, we also talk about values. We talk about direction, right? What is truly important to you? Like, what what activities makes your heart sing? What are some kind of, values, words that will guide your life? For me, I like, words that I value, or not words, but behavioral repertoires that I value is love, is authenticity, bravery, practicing what you preach, etc. And also we ask, how would you like to be as a person? How would you like to act towards others? How would you like to act towards yourselves? So in the values piece, we're asking these questions basically about direction, right? What is kind of, if you are not living your life running away from discomfort, how would you live your life? What if life could be about moving towards something that is important to you? What would that look like, and what would you move towards? So again, this is an area that I love about ACT, is when we set the direction and we talk about what we want to turn up, rather than having a full-time job trying to turn down something that is problematic or painful. And then there's committed action. Committed action is all about, putting this into action, actually putting down your feet, navigating towards a life that is important to you. So if you only talk about or understand acceptance or understand diffusion and all of that without actually doing it, it won't be very helpful. So we are inviting our clients to actually behave in life, to create happiness, to create a life of meaning by actions. So this is where we are actually taking action to pursue the important things in life. So this is the ACT model, the model of psychological flexibility that you probably know from ACT. And so I want now to take us back to the story that I was telling you about before. And I hope that you can see that, I'm passionate about teaching ACT. You could wake me up in the middle of the night and, press play, and I could talk about ACT for such a long time. I love talking about ACT. And the thing is, and I've said this before, talking about ACT might not be the same thing as actually doing ACT. So let's go back to the story that I was telling you about. There she is, my client. Obviously, this is not my client. It's just a stock photo. But there she is, my client. She is ready to take her own life. And she has written the the letter for her children, and she reads it out loud. Here's the thing, and none of my clients know this. Some of my trainees, I've told this, and I'm going to tell you this today because I don't tell this every time I talk about this. My grandfather took his life when I was a little girl. So whenever I work with suicide, I get so scared. I get so sad. And I probably would regardless. And for me, there is a story. There's a learning story. I was just a little girl when I first contacted suicide, when I saw what it did to my family. And my point here is that there's no way that we can step outside of our own stories. There's no way that we can step outside and not feel afraid and not feel insecure and not feel sad. I want to be careful about saying what we have to do. This is an invitation. What I invite us all to do is to take that with us, to take your stories, to take your fear, to bring your sadness, to bring your insecurity, and use that when you have your ACT conversations, your therapies, your coaching sessions, or whatever it is that you're doing, to bring it. Does that mean that you then say, oh, you think you're sad? Oh, I'm just going to tell you about me. When I was a little girl, I lost my grandfather, or something like, oh, you're going through a divorce. I went through a divorce and it was horrible. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not inviting you to always share your personal stories. What I am inviting you is to practice what you preach. Because here's what I did. She started reading that letter. And as I told you before, I did the one thing that I'm really good at. I might not be good at it, but sometimes I think I have a big enough repertoire so I can fake it till I make it. I can teach ACT. So that's what I did. I went to the whiteboard. I started talking. I started drawing. I had just written Kirk Strassel's and John Chow's book about suicidality, and I remembered the details. So I was giving her the statistics about suicidality in the United States. And I was in Sweden doing therapy in Swedish. I was telling her that inside this book, the suicidal patients are categorized in different categories, and she would probably be a category 3. And it just kept going, like I was giving her a lecture on suicidality. I was telling her about acceptance, while at the same time, my body language and everything I modeled to her, everything I showed her, was avoidance and control. So I was using words. I talked to her. I was teaching her acceptance, but I was showing her avoidance and control. I was teaching her diffusion. I was telling her to step back from her thoughts and notice them, while I was completely all over the place in my own head. I was telling her to contact the present moment. And I was, again, all over the place myself. I was telling her to hold her stories light and to take a kind and compassionate perspective on herself. All the time, I was beating myself up for being the worst therapist, human, woman in the universe. So I was giving her a lecture and beating myself up simultaneously. And I was unable to stop. This kept going. So I was both like being very self-critical and still teaching her about ACT. I was telling her to set a direction in her life, to think about who she wants to be towards others, towards herself. I was asking her what made her heart sing. And at the same time, I was showing her a version of me that is so far away from from who I want to be. I was the absolute opposite from my values. And I was telling her to put all of this into action, and take steps towards another life. While I was like digging myself down into a black hole. And so I hope that you can see, and I hope you can see the difference between what I was saying and what I was showing her. And so the session ended like that. And I quit my job. I literally went to my boss and said, I cannot do this. I will not do this. And he said that I could quit my job, but that I had to fix this first. And so I called her and invited her back. And she did come back. And she came back, I think it was 2 weeks later. For 2 weeks, and even longer, but I was in complete agony. And again, this is not about me and how sad I am for me. I wanted to tell you that it was so hard to look at myself and see what I did. I was so critical of myself. And I am so ashamed of sharing this with you. I wish I could say, oh, I did it. And it was amazing. But what I did was so far away from what I want to do and what I want to be about. And most importantly, it was not helpful for her at all. And so for 2 weeks, I almost didn't sleep. I was worrying. I was self-critical. And I was just ready to quit my job. And then I thought about, really, what is important to me? For me, it's important personally to be of service, to be inspirational, to be a role model, to be the vivacious hope, like to allow people to see themselves through my eyes. She could not see a future. She was in a place where she was so overwhelmed by sadness. Well, I wanted her to see herself through my kind and compassionate eyes. And I wanted to be the one that would sit with her and help her to get back into life. And so I've done all these values exercises that you probably know as well. I've been to my own funeral. I've done the funeral exercise, and I've had, a birthday party where my close ones did a speech. But this situation made me think about who and what are the qualities? Who do I want to be as a therapist? What is important to me? Now, it may not look actually that different than what I would like to be as a mom, as a partner, as a friend. It's very similar. But this is, I hope that, like, if there's anything you take away with you today, this is my hope. This is my wish for us all, to think about what would you like to be as a therapist? Like, what are your values? If we got together and gave a speech for you, so say we've been to your sessions, like, what are the qualities that you would like to bring into that room? So, and you're going to have in not too long, just going to prepare the team here in not too long. My invitation is that we go out into smaller groups, preferably groups of 3 or 4, if that is manageable. And I'm going to give you instructions soon. This is just to do a heads up for the team. So for 2 weeks, I was feeling really sad and started connecting to my values. And so she came back. And the first thing I offered her was an apology. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. The last time you were here, you read out a letter, a goodbye letter to your children. And when you did that, I felt so scared, so sad, and so insecure. And I didn't know what to do or what to say. And when I don't know what to do and say, I start to talk. And clearly, that wasn't helpful for you. And then we could talk about, I asked her, what do you know? Like, what do you do when these feelings shows up? She would talk about her self-harm, her suicidal planning, the letters that she would write. So we could talk about how we both got stuck. And I wasn't talking about my stuckness to get it off my chest. I was shining a light on my stuckness to show our common humanity and to let her know that when we start struggling, it's normal to do that. And sometimes the way we struggle, the way we start to control and avoid becomes a part of the problem. And so we could look at her avoidance behaviors and we could look at how that was so not helpful for her. And I made her a promise. I promised her, like, I wish I could take away your darkness, but there's no way I can take it away. What I can do is I will sit with you in your darkness, and I will not leave any of us. I will sit with you in your darkness. And so I hope that you guys can see that there is a difference between the behavioral repertoire of the session that I told you about, where I was teaching ACT. And again, the things that I was saying, they were like, pretty cool. And it was not helpful at all because I was modeling something completely different. Whereas this time, I was in tears. I was so vulnerable, so ashamed. What I did was that I showed her a willingness to sit with my own stuff and hers. I stepped back from my thoughts and I started to notice the difference between me having my thoughts or my thoughts having me. I stayed in the here and the now. Every time my mind invited me to wander somewhere else, I stayed in the here and now. I held myself in compassion and I held her in compassion. Every time my mind invited me to beat myself up and get sucked into those stories of being a horrible therapist, I stepped out of those stories and I had compassion for myself and the struggle and for her. I made a deliberate choice about who I want to be as a therapist. And I did, if you will, committed action on that. I showed her, I acted out a behavioral repertoire of the therapist that I wanted to be. That might not always be nice. That might not always leaving you feeling competent or sure or clever. And I think at the same time that it was very, very helpful. All right, I'm just gonna check here. I see that there are messages coming in, and as I am wanting to look at you when I talk, I don't really see all the messages here. So here's one. I'm just gonna read it out loud. It must have been really tough to be in your shoes in that situation. I can only imagine the chaos you must have felt. Kudos to you for how you manage it, and thank you for sharing your story, even in the presence of shame. Thank you for saying that. And this is actually, so really, thank you so much. And this is actually one of the things that I wanted us to work on, is to share stories about how we get entangled in our own stuff, and start to, again, talk about it rather than doing it. So here's my invitation for you guys to, I should have brought napkins. I'm sorry. There's a mess here. So can I just check with you guys as I look at your faces? Does this resonate with you? Do you recognize this? Yes, you're nodding. You're nodding. Yes. So here's my invitation that we now, in smaller groups of 3 or 4, I'm going to leave this up to the amazing team who's doing this. I know that breakout rooms is a puzzle, but sometimes is a bit tricky. My invitation is that you go out into the breakout rooms and that you share with your small group times where you might feel that you kind of did a little more of talking about ACT rather than actually doing ACT. So share these examples that we're often a little ashamed to talk about. See if you would be willing to do that. And then also talk with I know that there's a lot of instructions now. So one, share with the group examples where you kind of lost it a little bit, lost yourself a little bit. And then also talk with your group about what kind of therapist do you want to be? If you're not a therapist, like what kind of change maker would you like to be? What are the values that you want to guide your behavior forwards, so that you don't just talk about ACT, but that you actually embody ACT, model ACT. So 1, talk about your struggle. 2, talk about your values. Is the assignment clear?
Yes. How many time? How many minutes?
So how many minutes? So I'm going to, yes. So I'm going to put, so if you could put people in groups of 3 or 4, and then I'm going to have you come back here in 15 minutes.
Okay.
All right. And so it's going to take a few minutes for the team to send everybody off. By now, you're used to this. So I'll see you in 15 minutes. That the things that we're telling ourselves, you probably wouldn't say to someone else. Like, just notice your critical mind and notice how you would never say that to me. You would never say that to the people who were in your group breakout room. But notice how you speak to yourself. And some of you might have seen this before then. I wanted to ask you, like, if you could bring forward a younger version of yourself? Like, would you say that to her? And I'm going to show you pictures now of little women. And this goes out to everybody, regardless of gender identification. These could have been little humans. So just know that it is meant broader. But ask yourself the things that you're telling yourself. Would you say this to her? To her? Would you say it to her? Now imagine saying the things that you're telling yourself. Imagine telling that to her. Just notice. Just notice. Would you say it to her? Just notice what happens in your mind and in your heart right now as you see all these images. And ask yourself, would you tell her that? And so the next time that you have a moment of self-judgment, being critical, see if you can bring forward actually a photo of yourself and offer yourself the kindness and compassionate love that you would probably offer if you were saying that to her. This is a photo of me, by the way, when I was little. Guess you could see that. So we're coming at the very end of this workshop here. I want to inspired or invited by the lovely Lucia to tell you guys that if you wish to connect with me further, first of all, thank you. Gracias a todos for being here. From my heart to your heart, I am deeply honored that I get to spend a little time with you this Sunday. I'm just, so happy that we're here together, and I hope this was helpful for you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing in your little group. Here's my website, my Instagram profile. And if you want to come and connect on Facebook, you'll find me there. And I wanted to, if you look at the bottom here, the Facebook group, in here, it says ACT Skill Building. That is the address of the group. The group is called Impact. I think it's a very clever name, Impact. I'm guessing that maybe some of you are already in there. If you want to connect, please come and join the group. In there, you'll get to hang out with me and with your fellow ACT humans from all over the world. You don't have to be perfect or good at English. I am not. And we can connect. And then in here, I will offer support and mini trainings and a way for us to connect. So see this as an invitation. If you want to come in there and connect, that's where you find me. You can also always, go to my website. There you'll find contact information if you want to reach out to me and connect. So I see, this chat is going crazy. Oh, also, I see a word somewhere, cocktails. That sometimes we have cocktails and courageous conversation. Yeah, baby, we get together, we have a cocktail, and we talk about things that are important. I see some of you has been in there. So I'm reading the chat. There's a lot of love in the chat. Thank you so much.
I love you, Rikke.
Oh, and I love you back. And so here at the very end, thank you for all of the love right back to you. If you were left with questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect. Please come and join the Facebook group if you want to. And thank you so much to the team for organizing this. I love the ACBS. I love the group who put this together. So thank you to everybody, and take care.
Thank you very much, Rikke. It was great to have you. I can see that you have your love is contagious. So thank you very much. It was great to have you here.
Thank you a todos. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.